Legend of Zelda, A Link to the Past, is a game that has nothing to do with time travel.
Now, I've swapped my spit with this game before, and wow, did I just realize how odd that sounded coming out of my mouth. I've never said that before. And what does it mean? Like, do I actually swap spit with the game? Like, did me and the game spit in each other's mouths? Is that what I'm saying?
It doesn't even have a mouth!
Well, according to Wikipedia, apparently it means to kiss or make out.
And I don't kiss my games. Well, at least not this one.
The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past is a game I've played a lot over the years, and by that, I mean mostly the first 15 minutes. You see, my dad owned a silver Game Boy Advance SP, and he bought it with Link to the Past and Four Swords, because he remembered playing A Link to the Past on the Super Nintendo way back in the day. And so, as a kid, it was one of the main games I played when I was bored with my Xbox 360 and Wii and DS and didn't feel like hooking up the N64 for some Star Wars Episode 1 Racer, or Mario 64, or play any original Xbox games on my 360. I would bust out the GPA and play some Pac-Man Collection.
I don't know where Pac-Man Collection went, but I did find Chicken Little.
Yeah, I don't remember playing this one too much because I sucked hard at it. I was like 8 or 9, probably. I could get past the beginning and would die on my way to the first dungeon. I vaguely remember beating the first dungeon once, but I gave up as soon as I got to the levers and sandworm thingies in the second one. But years later, I managed to beat this game on emulator.
Oh, sorry. I accidentally pressed my bleep button. I press it every time I say words I don't want heard.
And way later on, I was able to beat the game again on the NSO app. Alright, with that out of the way, we can start the game talking now. Oh, the title screen. Even as a kid, it was awesome. It is without question my favorite title screen of any game I have ever played. The slow build of the super impressive looking Triforce flying through the screen and then that thunderous ba ba da 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 ba ba da has never failed to make me want to play this game. Waiting on the title screen, as you do in these games, you're given a story blurb, and then bam! You're shown a proper opening cutscene. It's nothing crazy, but it is a bunch of animation, and it is really sick to see. A first for the series. I'll go over it in more detail in a few minutes when I do some story recap, as I normally do. Now, hopping into the game, we are greeted to one of the best opening sequences in any game in the series. And by this point, you've definitely noticed that I am Santa in this footage. I forgot that I did this as a joke because I played this on like Christmas Eve or whatever. I was Santa while I played Zelda. So all of the footage at the beginning will have my face with Santa over it. Okay, thanks, bye. Now, hopping into the game, we are greeted to one of the best opening sequences in any game in the series. Essentially, you are sleeping, when in your head you hear the voice of Princess Zelda calling to you for help. So, your uncle, who also hears Zelda's message, ventures off into the castle to rescue the princess. But, being the ever-courageous person we are, we venture into the castle behind him. And that's right, A Link to the Past starts with a jailbreak. Venturing through the courtyard and into the castle itself, we find our uncle dying on the ground, and he says, "Link, I'm going to teach you the ancient technique passed down the generations of our people. Spin really, really fast and stab them with your sword. Anyways, I'ma die now. Zelda is your..." That last line in particular is often debated upon of what he was actually going to say after Zelda is your. Some people say sister, or destiny, or ally, but you know what I think? I think it's that Zelda is your grill! So now that we have the sword, we can go through... excuse me. So now that we have the sword, we can now go on to slaughter the masses of innocent soldiers that are just being mind-controlled by the game's bad guy, Aghanim the Wizard. Yeah, all these soldier guys that you murder in cold blood are not evil or anything. They are just straight-up dudes forced to do the bad guy's evil deeds because of evil magic. So the next time you play this game and kill one of these green soldiers by sending him into a pit or stabbing him and then eating his heart to replenish your health, just know he had a family, and that heart belonged to his family. So why did you eat it, you sick fuck? Making our way through the castle dungeon, we find the ball and chain soldier. You stab him real good and save Princess Zelda. We then make our way back through the castle and exit through a secret door into the sewers that leads to the sanctuary. I absolutely love this opening. No matter how many times I've played it, it never seems not fun to me. I think it's just the setting of a stormy night, being called away from your home and the comfort of your bed by a voice echoing of your head, and then sneaking into a castle, traversing down to the depths of the dungeons to rescue someone who is bound to you by some force you will never quite understand, to just be utterly fascinating. And again, it's a jailbreak sequence, and not the last one we'll see in the series. It is definitely the best part of Twilight Princess's opening as well. After the jailbreak part, we meet the loyal sage in the sanctuary. And then, he and Zelda tell us to go to Kakariko Village to speak to an old guy named Saharolalsa. Sahasrara. Jesus. And then bam! We're chucked right out into the open world. Now we can go out and explore. And there is a lot to explore in this game. Unlike Zelda 2, A Link to the Past once again returns to a 2D top-down perspective for the entire thing. Not some weird amalgamation like that game was. But, before exploring, let's go find Saharagals. Whatever. And after heading to Kakariko and talking with his family, we get told to head to the Eastern Temple. We do, and then in the little shack, we meet Saharolalsa. And we finally get our real quest and the full taste of an actual proper story in this series. So, story time, kids. Sit down, grab your popcorn, and if you don't care, skip to the timecode on screen, though this time it won't be nearly as long as the section in the Zelda 2 video, I promise. So, we technically have two beginnings in a way. There's the plot and lore in the manual and the one in the opening cutscene of the game. They're pretty much the same story, just one is less involved, so I'm going to explain the whole thing because they are basically just one big story. From the heavens, 3 gods descended down to create life. The gods of power, wisdom, and courage. Who didn't have names at this point in the series, but we all know they go on to be called the goddesses Din, Nehru, and Furor. Din created the earth. Nehru created science and wizardry.
Oh, so it's her fault I failed
and Furor
chemistry.
Created life. Before they departed from this realm, they also created the Triforce. Though, in the manual, the picture clearly has the words Master Force written here, but then Triforce is written up here, and I don't know, it's not important, but the Triforce had the power to give people titles. And they are, and I quote, the Forger of Strength, the Keeper of Wisdom, and the Juror of Courage. I kinda get the other two, but why Juror? I'm looking at the dictionary, and the word juror is most likely being used in the taking an oath way, and not in the I have jury duty way. And so, essentially, it means like the guy who took the oath of courage for the third title. I don't know, maybe I'm reading too much into things. It doesn't really matter, because it, to my knowledge, never comes up again in the series. The gods then placed the Triforce in the Golden Land, later to be known as the Sacred Realm. There it called out to people for thousands of years, searching for someone worthy of the title so it could bestow upon them ultimate power. Okay, here's the next part. Okay, ready for it? The Hylia people were endowed with psychic powers. Due to their magic-filled blood, and they were also given skills in wizardry. It is also said that their long, pointed ears let them hear messages from the gods. What? That's so random. They got, like, magic in their blood. Yeah, okay, but, like, telepathy? They fucking throwing shit with their minds? Like, oh, Ganondorf's back. Why don't they just throw every single pot at him in the kingdom with their psychic powers? Jeez. People really wanted the Triforce, but there was a book that some Hylians wrote called the Book of Medora, which you can actually get in the game, by the way. And in this book, there is a passage that reads, "In a realm beyond sight, the sky shines gold, not blue. And there, The Triforce's might makes mortal dreams come true. This made many people really want to get their grubby little Cheetos dust-covered fingers on the Triforce. Many went out and searched for it out of pure greed. Until one day, a gang of thieves accidentally found the entrance to the Golden Land. The group fought for the Triforce, and their leader was the only one left standing in the end. And his name was Ganondorf Dragmire. That's right, bet you didn't know that. Ganon's last name is Dragmire. That sounds pretty close to. Or his alias. Or he also goes by his alias, Mandrag Ganon.
How do you guys think he addressed his subordinates? I, Mandrag Ganon, these nuts across your face! Oh!
Which means Ganon of the Enchanted Thieves. When Ganondorf touched the Triforce, the clouds darkened the sky, and bad stuff started happening all over the place. So the king sent 7 wise men and some knights to go seal up the Golden Land. They also thought that Ganon's magic may have been the same as the Triforce, so the Hylians crafted a sword that was resistant to magic. The Blade of Evil's Bane. The Master Sword. It could only be wielded by a warrior who is pure of heart, but no one in that time could wield it. So the knights and the 7 wise men banded together and sealed the Golden Land shut, but at a high cost. Nearly all of the bloodline of valiant knights were slain, the people rejoiced, and this event went down in Hyrule's history, known only as the Imprisoning War. A few hundred years later, Hyrule was stricken with many unforgiving natural phenomenons, until one day the king sent out for a hero who could save the land. And the one who did was a mysterious wizard named Aghanim. Aghanim saved the kingdom and was quickly hailed as the hero of Hyrule. But he had more nefarious plans. He was appointed to be the chief advisor and the heir to the 7 wise men. Soon after, he betrayed and killed the king of Hyrule, and took the descendants of the wise men hostage and sent them into the Dark World, a place that was once the Holy Golden Land, twisted by Ganondorf's evil. There, they were sealed in crystals and placed in all of the palaces around the Dark World. Princess Zelda is soon captured and imprisoned as well, but before she can be sent to the Dark World as well, she sends out word to the ancient knights of Hyrule. But before she can be sent to the Dark World as well, she uses her magic to send out word to the descendants of the ancient knights of Hyrule. Okay, so I'm about to flex my Zelda lore muscles a little bit here and say that some of this is not canon anymore. Simply put, the Hylians don't really have any special powers in any of the games, or even in this one. They do not have psychic powers. I believe this was only in here to show how Zelda telepathically talks to you at the start of the game. And lastly, we know how Ganon was sealed away. It is how Ocarina of Time ends. I know I'm reading too much into this, and the games aren't really created with the ideas of sequels or being connected in mind, but I find it fascinating how much has really changed since the start of the series, especially since the release of Hyrule Historia, giving us one of the most confusing timelines in all of gaming. And that's it for the plot, and with that out of the way, we can move on to the actual game. So after you break Zelda out of jail, we meet up with Sorrel Solos, and he tells us of our mission, to conquer the 3 dungeons, to get the 3 pendants, and wake the sleeping Master Sword, in order to defeat Aghanim. Yeah, that's right. It only took us 3 games to get here, but we finally have it. Without question, one of the most iconic pieces of gaming iconography, the Master Sword. Now, its origins in the manual are vague, but it's still not canon anymore. They explained that the Hylians made it so as to resist magic, though going forward it would be retconned by pretty much the entire plot of Skyward Sword, going on to explain how it was initially forged. But we'll get to that when we talk about that game. Anyways, it's crazy to me that it took this long for it to appear in the series. We went through 2 mainline games without the most iconic piece of Zelda gear. Crazy. But getting the Master Sword is only the first of many things that we can and will have to do on our journey throughout Hyrule. You see, A Link to the Past is the first game to have a fully realized Hyrule. Yes, Zelda 2 definitely had an in-depth Hyrule, but compared to this game, it's nothing. Link to the Past would go on to be the blueprint for 90% of the series going forward. So let's talk about it. Firstly, I wanted to mention how much better this game controls than the other games we've talked about thus far. It is the first game in the series to introduce a Zelda staple, a feature, honestly, some can't live without. Diagonal movement for you. It can be a bit janky at times, but in this game you can move diagonally, which is a godsend. When things in the first game moved at an angle and you couldn't, it made dodging things annoying and honestly unfair. But now, look at me. I'm listing lazily to the left.
Where do they go? There they are. They're listing lazily to the left. Go left, left.
Boy, this guy knows some maneuvers.
Diagonal movement is great, but the rest of the controls are a bit strange, and there is one part that I think is flat out bad. So, if you have an SNES controller, it's great, it feels good in the hands, and it's a really nice controller. You have your D-pad for movement, and that makes sense, and select being how you save or quit. Wonderful. Then you get to the face buttons. You have B to swing your sword, your A button is for actions like opening chests or picking up and throwing stuff, and then the Y button is for using items, and the X button is for opening the map. It all seems alright so far. Well, the SNES controller was one of the first to introduce shoulder buttons. You see right here? You would be forgiven for not knowing that. I didn't either until I bought my Super Nintendo about a year-ish ago, and what do they do in this game? They zoom the map in and out on the map screen and that's it. What a waste of buttons. Like, come on, there's nothing else you guys could have binded them to? This is a problem I have with some of the Zelda games from this era. Unused buttons. In this game, and like most 2D Zeldas, you can only have one item equipped at a time, and when there's two nice meaty shoulder buttons just sitting there waiting to be smacked down on to swing a hammer or shoot fire with the fire rod, it just makes me upset that they go unused. Now, you don't have to switch items that much in the game when doing any action, really, but it still would have been really nice and saved a ton of time when I'm at low hearts, for example. I don't have to go into my inventory, highlight the bottle, scroll down, select my health potion, leave my inventory, hit the Y button, wait to heal, go back in my inventory to reselect my previous item, and continue playing the game. It would have been really nice to be able to have more items right and ready to go, and able to just slap the R button and bam, I'm healed, and I still have my bow or whatever equipped. My best bet as to why they didn't do this would be that either the previous games didn't have it, or they didn't want to overwhelm players, or they thought people would misclick and hit the buttons by accident, which is fair, but I still think it would have made the game way more fun and intuitive. And this game's sequel, A Link Between Worlds on 3DS, had the whole multi-button thing going on there. But that game is also way better than this one, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Anyways, enough about the controls. It's not a big deal or a deal breaker in any way. The game is still incredibly fun to this day, and that's largely due to just how well the game is handled. Throughout Hyrule, you will find NPCs with things to say and do, and personalities, memorable ones, like the fisherman or the bridge, or the King Zora who sells you the flippers, or the bully on Death Mountain who is constantly kicking his friend. They're great. But my favorite NPC in this game is without question the Flute Kid. You walk into the forest in the light world, and there he is playing the flute for his animals, and when you approach he vanishes like a ghost. That is, unless you go to him in the dark world, where you then see him, and he gives you his flute, before quietly passing on and turning into a dead tree. There's also the sick bug-catching boy, who is afflicted with a mysterious illness emanating from Death Mountain. See, I love the NPCs in Zelda games. They're some of my favorite parts of these games. And there are a lot more I'm excited to talk about in future games. And yes, there were some NPCs in the last two games, but the NPCs we know today for this franchise really got their start early. And there are more I could talk about from this game, but I think I should move on to the subject of exploration. Throughout the game, you progress through the story and complete dungeons. You'll get items like the Titan Mitt that lets you lift heavy objects, or the hammer which lets you pound down pegs, and things like these let you unlock more of the map, and find secrets throughout both the dark and light worlds. Like the upgrade fairies. There's one in the light world who you talk to in the Pond of Happiness by throwing a bunch of rupees into the water, and every 100 rupees she'll come out and raise the amount of bombs and arrows you can carry by 5 each time you give her 100 rupees, which comes out to a max of 70 arrows and 50 bombs. There's another one by the Zora Falls, and this one is hidden behind a waterfall. My favorite place to hide things. You ever play a game and go behind a waterfall and there's no secret and then you get sad? And when there is one, you're like, wow, game designers, come up with an original hiding place. Yeah, I used to keep my Nutella in the fridge, but, that's too cliche. Now I keep it in my socks.
Barty, why do your feet smell like
How
chocolate?
can you smell over the phone? There are also a ton of heart pieces scattered all around the world, 24 to be exact, some easy to find and some not so easy, like the ones you get from the minigames. The digging game and the chess game to be precise. To my luck, I got both really quickly after trying. I got the chess game one first try. Insane luck. But I candidly remember the first time I played this game, spending an hour at least doing the digging game. There's also the archery game that I didn't know existed until I was looking through a list of all Link to the Past characters. Barty, who was too lazy to set up capture. How was it?
It's pretty good.
The reason I probably haven't heard of the archery minigame is because you don't get anything of value from doing it, only rupees, so there was never really a need to go down there and do it. But, keeping on the subject of exploring and such, in a hole in the ground, you can also find the Mad Batter. If you wake him up with some magic powder that you get by giving the mushroom to the witch lady, the Mad Batter will give you a half magic meter. That's right, the magic meter. It's back from Zelda 2 and here to stay until Breath of the Wild. The magic meter in this game is used by some items now, not spells. There are things like the magic cape and the cane of Bjarna, I don't know, which both make you temporarily invulnerable for magic. Or the fire or ice rods that let you shoot out fire or ice for magic. Or my favorite items, the 3 medallions, the bois medallion, the ether medallion, and the quake medallion. The bois medallion, eating up a lot of your magic meter in order to create an explosion and set ablaze a bunch of enemies around you. The ether medallion, which strikes lightning down on your foes, and the quake medallion, where you stab your sword into the ground and then it causes a massive earthquake, turning enemies into slime. And the quake one is easily my favorite of the 3. I like earth powers.
Probably why I like playing Good in Diablo 4, and Toph is the best fighting style in Avatar.
Plus, earthquakes got me like... Collecting all these medallions are all necessary to beating the game, and they can be a bit hidden. But if you're like me, you use Zelda Dungeon's guides to help you on your journey. I am in no way affiliated with Zelda Dungeon, but I still use their guides all the time when I'm stuck in these games, or just need a little help with stuff. If you want to go check them out, you should. This is also the place where I do a lot of my research for these videos. Anyhoozle, the point I'm trying to get at is the sheer amount of side content in this game is awesome. And there's even my favorite kind of secrets. The ones that have no effect on the game and are just fun. Like this, you walk into an empty house in Kakariko Village, and then you lift this pot and there's a cuckoo. That's not that weird. There's something like this in another house too, but if you spray this cuckoo with magic powder, it turns into a girl and then gives you an ominous message warning you that the weathercock is always watching. And this is also the first introduction of Kakariko Village and the cuckoos. So, you know, they can kill you if you cut them. And if you get to that point, your only option is to... So I forgot to add this into the script, so I'm just going to add it in here, but as you could have seen when I was attacked by the cuckoos, there was an ungodly amount of slowdown, and that's actually a big problem with this game specifically, is on the original Super Nintendo, there is a lot of slowdown when there's multiple enemies on screen. It could be that my Super Nintendo isn't working the best, which is totally possible, but I'm not 100% sure, but it's definitely still kind of weird. So if any of you guys know what's up with that, if it's just my Super Nintendo or if it's the game in general, let me know. But speaking of new stuff, let's talk about some new items, shall we? Namely, one of the most iconic gaming items of all time. The butt catcher, I mean the hookshot. The best item in 3D Zelda, and in the 2D games, all it really does is let you get over pits and across a room relatively quickly for some puzzles, so it's not that great. But oh, it will be. And it's still fun to use here, just nothing I'm ever jumping at the chance to use whenever there's a block across the room. Honestly, the hookshot's a minuscule use in this game makes it shocking how useful it'll be in the games going forward. And it is still really useful here, but all it really does is something that the Rock's Cape / Feather does in the other 2D games. It lets you cross relatively small gaps. Other new items include the strength upgrades, the power gloves, and the Titan mitt, which let you lift heavy rocks, and then even heavier rocks. The Pegasus boost, which give you a dash and let you blow up some weak walls instead of having to use bombs, as well as the blue and red nails, each one decreasing the amount of damage you take. It is incredible the amount of variety of stuff you find and use. And most of these items, again, are used in the overworld to help you find secrets. And couple this with a slick new feature where if you poke a wall with your sword, it'll make a zap kind of sound if it's not bummable. But it makes a tink-tink sound when it is bombable. It makes it way easier to tell what walls are decoration and what walls are not, as well as the new wall crumble look, making it more obvious as to what might be a bombable wall. Unlike in Zelda 1, where it was just kinda up to chance whether or not the wall was bombable, because you couldn't tell. It is incredibly useful. Anyways, this item discussion wouldn't be complete without talking about one of the most important items in all of Zelda, the Master Sword. After completing the 3 dungeons and claiming the 3 pendants, we head to the Lost Woods and make our way through it until we enter a clearing with animals passing by. You walk up to the altar and draw the Master Sword. In this game, the Master Sword will shoot sword beams when you are at full health, like the other swords in the previous games, but unlike those sword beams, these aren't as helpful. Not that they're bad by any means, far from it, but with the bow or the boomerang or the hookshot, you have far more ranged options, making it not nearly as bad when you take damage and no longer have sword beams anymore. It also does more damage, and you can even upgrade it twice. The first is by going to the 2 dwarven blacksmith. Odd, I don't think there are any other dwarves in the games. The Picori may be, but I don't think that counts. The other upgrade you get from the cursed fairy.
And you can tell she is cursed because she's fat! Ha! Got him!
And it makes the Master Sword 4 times more powerful than the starting sword, letting it 1 to 2 shot most enemies and even some bosses. It's sweet! But now that we have the base Master Sword, we can go and fight Aghanim, who has captured the princess while we were away and killed the sage she was with. And now to Hyrule Castle to save Zelda. And she's gone. Oops. Alright, let's fight the wizard. And bam, he's dead. But not really. And now we're here in the Dark World. Now, I've mentioned the Dark World a few times, and now I'll explain it to you. For those who may not know, the Dark World is a mirrored evil version of Hyrule, with different monsters and NPCs. It was once the Golden Land that held the Triforce, and now it has been twisted by Ganon's evil to be this, a less colorful version of Hyrule where you will now spend most of the game. It's fine, it's fun to explore, and the secrets are just as cool, and it pretty much doubles the amount of space you can explore. Interestingly enough, the only way to get into the Dark World is through portals on the overworld, and finding these portals can be a bit challenging if you don't know what to look for. But man, does it help you get around. There are even some puzzles and collectibles that you need to get by traveling between both worlds, and it's really fun every time you have to do it. Also in the Dark World are the 7 maidens sealed in the Dark World's dungeons. But with so much to do and explore, the game wouldn't be finished without the enemies. And oh my, what a variety. Since both the Dark and Light worlds have different enemies, we have a lot to go over. So, here we go. In The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, we have a grand total of 123 unique enemies. Holy shit! So yeah, I would say there's a lot of enemies in this game, but not as many iconic ones that stick out to me. You got your soldiers, your bees, your bomb knights, but nothing that crazy new that sticks out. All of the enemies here are fun to look at and fight, but nothing sticks out to me too much, you know? I've played this game a lot, and every time I do, I forget about Geldman. Do you remember Geldman?
Oh! How could I forget?
Who? And there are many others like Geldman, such as Slugga, Zoro, Hokuboku, Gibbo, not Gibdo, Gibbo, and Popo. Kaspua, and the list goes on. But there is the Chain Chomp. You know, from Mario? I remember it being in Link's Awakening, but honestly not this game. Strange. There are some great returning enemies though, like the Moblins and the Lionels, and of course, the Boulder! So far, we're batting a 3 for 3 on games with Boulder and games without Boulder, and I think it's just a measure of game's quality whether or not it has a Boulder in it.
Bad game. No Boulder!
The bosses this time around are also pretty hit or miss, but they are still the best we've got thus far in the series. Some great ones, some not so great ones. But since it's time to talk about the bosses, I also think it's time to talk about the dungeons, and I have a brand new segment all about this.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to North America's favorite game show, Talk Show.
Rate That Dungeon! With your host, Me!
Hello everybody and welcome to North America's favorite game show, talk show, broadcast live on television and on radio, aka a YouTube video that you statistically aren't watching right now because my viewer retention is terrible. Rate That Dungeon. Today's subject, a link to the past. Now this game has a grand total of 12 dungeons, each with a unique boss and theme. Here at Rate That Dungeon, we rate each dungeon and boss on a scale of 1 to 10 using my patented find some garbage around my house. Today's rating scale is an empty box of Boston Pizza chicken wings with the bone still in it. This episode is also sponsored by McDonald's. McDonald's, we got the meats. Alright, without any further ado, let's start off with our first dungeon. Hyrule Castle. This dungeon is technically one you come to twice during the game. Once at the start of the game, and once right after you get the Master Sword. This dungeon is fine, but nothing spectacular. The cool theming of you sneaking into the castle the first time you come in is really cool, but in the end, I don't think it's really all that fun as a dungeon, but the boss fight at the end is awesome. You fight Aghanim, and his fight is the first introduction to a Zelda staple. Tennis. Overall, I would give this dungeon a solid 4 out of 10. Oh hey, it's our first caller!
Oh boy, hi party. First time caller, first time watcher. I really like this dungeon. I think the cool theming at the beginning really carries it to at least a high 6.
Well yes, the theming is cool, it can't carry the whole dungeon, when the layout is uninteresting and also bland. Thank you for calling. Next up, we have the Eastern Palace. Now, this is definitely a step up from the first dungeon in almost every way. The layout is way better, and the enemy placement is also really sweet. The boss of this dungeon is the Armos Knights. A really easy boss fight. This always sort of just, fades from my memory because they die in like 2 seconds. Solid 5 out of 10 dungeon. After that, we get to the Desert Palace. This one is really neat. I've always really liked desert areas in games, and this is definitely one of them. I like the idea of having to exit the dungeon and come back in different areas to get around, and the enemies are kinda cool. But the boss is Lamola, and he's kinda lame. So that brings it down a few points. 6 out of 10. Oh boy! It's our second caller! Alright, caller, you're on the air!
Hi, Mr. Barty. I'm so excited to be here.
It's great to have you, Mr.
Mr. Nunya. None your business.
So next we have the Tower of Hera. The Tower of Hera is an awesome dungeon and the best up to this point in the game. I've always been a big fan of going up tall towers in games like the Battle Tower in Pokemon or the Tower of Gods in Wind Waker. So this one is automatically up there for me. I also really like the introduction of the switch and block mechanics. And the boss is Moldorm. And his fight is kinda annoying, but it's a pretty iconic 2D Zelda enemy, and I still think the challenge of not falling down is fun. Solid 7 out of 10. Hello?
Hey, Barty. I have a question.
Ask away, caller.
Well, why is the Eastern Palace called the Eastern Palace and the Desert Palace called the Desert Palace?
Because the Eastern Palace is in the east and the Desert Palace is in the desert.
I get that, but why not just call them the Eastern and Western Palace, or the Rocky and Desert Palace, or maybe even the Left and Right Palace?
Actually, a valid question, but I don't know. Thank you for calling. So, now we're in the Dark World, and we're going to start speedrunning through these, okay? The Dark Palace is kind of forgettable, and not anything really noteworthy to say, and I don't remember any of it at all. The boss is the Helmasaur King, hit him with a hammer, stab him in the face, and it's pretty fun. 3 to 10. Boss is cool, nothing else memorable. Swamp Palace is a palace in the swamp. Gotta drain the water in the dungeon by going to the overworld and then pulling the thing and the water dungeon is gone. I don't know, it's a pretty fun dungeon, but kinda swampy. Boss is Argus. He could be in Terraria, you cut his eyes, and then you kill him. 4 out of 10. Alright, so recording crashed during this next part, and I didn't notice for a few hours. Next part is Skull Woods, and it's fun. You have to do this thing where you leave the dungeon and come back in, but this time it sucks, because if you die outside the dungeon, you have to walk all the way back from the Pyramid of Power. Not fun. Boss is Mothula, a really annoying moth, and I have no footage of it here, but trust me, I made the boss fight. The floor moves and there are spikes everywhere. Oh, you have a call.
Boobies.
Next is the Gargoyle's Domain. Also don't have much footage to this one. You wander around a lot and kill some enemies. The layout is really fun and involves finding ways up and down in the various rooms. You need to do this to reach new areas. And you save the maiden early on, but oh wait, she was secretly a gargoyle and then you need to kill her because she's actually the boss. It's cool, and I like this one too. Too bad I lost the footage. 6 out of 10. Hello, caller, you're on the air.
A Link to the Past? I didn't know they made a prequel to A Link Between Worlds.
I hate that guy. Anyways, the Ice Palace got me feeling like, woo! I like this one. It's kind of maze-like, and burning enemies using the fire rod is fun, and there's a lot of technique to movement in here, and I like it. Boss is Cold Stare. Looks kind of like Krakow from Kirby. 7 out of 10. Then we have Misery Mire. Yep, I'm miserable. It's a fine dungeon. Layout can be a bit annoying, but it's still fun to run around in. And the boss is another weird eyeball thing called Vitrios. Stab him with your sword. 6 out of 10. Alright, next is Turtle Rock. And oh me, oh my, do I love me some Turtle Rock. Being the second last dungeon is a hard thing to do, and oh boy does it succeed. Challenging, but not too challenging, and just a lot of fun. The boss is really cool. Tyrannix. I have no clue. Use the fire and ice rest to kill it, and it's a 3-headed turtle. The Cerberus of turtles. And lastly, Ganon's Tower. Holy crap, remember when I said I like tower-based things? Well, this is a tower. And without question, the best dungeon in the game. Ganon throws everything at you, including some of the bosses you've already taken out. But if you have the full power Master Sword like I did, they are nothing compared to your might. And slowly you reach the top, fight Aghanim once again. And once again he dies and turns into a bat and flies away right into the Pyramid of Power. You follow suit on the duck and then BAM! You're fighting Ganon, the game's final boss. And this fight is sick. A lot like the one from the first game, but way better. Dodging fire, tridents and stuff, it's super awesome. Ganon's Tower and the final boss fight get a whopping 8 out of 10. Definitely the best in this game. And now onto the quiz segment, so I could justify this being a game show.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to North America's favorite game show, talk show.
Rate that dungeon! Quiz. Alright, we have 3 callers. Caller number 1.
Nice to be here.
Caller number 2.
I'm gonna win.
And caller number 3.
Well, Barty, I hope no one steals my soul.
Alright, so first question. In what dungeon do the enemies, the Stalfos Knights, first appear?
Misery Mire.
Ooh! Not quite right there, my friend. Thanks for coming on the show, but sadly, since you got the question wrong, I do have to take your soul.
Oh my god, what the hell is that in my room? Oh god, my soul, no, Barty, spare me, ah!
Don't worry, I'll give it back. Like a week.
If I quit, do I get to keep my soul?
Yes.
You know what? I quit. I'm out.
Alright, that means you, caller number 1, are the winner. And you know what that means? You get the fantastic grand prize of a JPEG image of my face with my name written on it.
Yay.
Alright, that's it for this week's episode of Rate That Dungeon. Hope you enjoyed. I'll see you guys next time. Alright, welcome back. What'd you think of that? I had fun making it, but let me know. Should it be longer, shorter, whatever. Anyways, that's really about it for the actual game. After finishing the Tower of Ganon and getting all of the heart pieces and upgrades, all you really need to do is beat Ganon. And as I said, the fight's really fun. Easily the most fun boss fight in the game. And when it's all over and Ganon's been killed, again, we get the Triforce and wish for everything to be good again. And the credits roll. As we look through the credits, we see that everyone who died and who got sick returned to life. Because of us. And we all live happily ever after. But there's one last thing I wanted to touch on for the game itself. And that's naming your character. Throughout most of this video, I have used you instead of Link when talking about him, a staple of the series, and one of the most important in gaming, being the ability to name your character. Sure, you could do it in the first 2 games, but it had no effect in the game. Now, when you talk to people, they'll call out your name. For me, it was Barty. And I love this subtle change. It makes this game and the games going forward more impactful. I love it. It really makes it feel like your adventure, your quest. Because yes, Link is bland, but you're supposed to feel like Link. You are Link, and Link is you. That's why he's so androgynous. And I think it's spectacular that this is a feature in most games going forward. And honestly, I can't imagine Zelda or all of gaming without it. And that's about all I can say about the main game here. A Link to the Past is a fantastic game, and it set the standard for what the series was. But it was the first to do so, and that does come with some drawbacks. Namely the dungeons. They are way better than in the first two games, but still pale in comparison to the games going forward, and even its sequel on 3DS. So on the whole, it's great. But when judging it on the grand scale of the whole series, I think it is a bit lacking. But it's not this game's fault that I think that the games going forward are going to be better. And honestly, that's a good thing for the series. If it peaked this early on, we wouldn't be talking about Zelda the same way we are today. But yeah, that's it for the game part of the video. Now, I'm going to talk about the other stuff, like the commercials and the comics and all that kind of thing. So, if that's not for you, feel free to skip to my clothing... So, if that's not for you, feel free to skip ahead to my clothing thoughts. So, if that's not for you, feel free to skip ahead to my clothing... So, if that's not for you, feel free to skip ahead to my clothing... So if that's not for you, feel free to skip ahead to my closing thoughts. So the TV commercials for this game are pretty sweet. First, the North American ad.
This time it calls you to the ultimate battle of good against evil. To a quest few are prepared for, and fewer still survive. But perhaps now the power is within your grasp. It's the game that's already a legend. The Legend of Zelda, A Link to the Past. Only on the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. Now you're playing with superpower.
I love this one. It gives the game this really epic feeling, and not to mention the sick front flip Link does over this gap. It is super unnecessary, but it is sick as hell. And then the Japanese commercial is... well, take a look. 'That's right. Link challenges Ganon to a dance battle. They challenge the King of Evil, the Prince of Darkness, to a dance battle. What if Link was getting mugged?
Your rupees are your life.
Right foot creep, walking with that heater. Look around, stay low, make sure they don't see you. Catch them bad, walk down, face them with the heater. The devil under your feet, you're on your way to see him.
Hey, so I'm editing this right now, and I just noticed that in this footage, if you see real close, Link actually uses the Quake medallions. He stabs his sword to the ground, and some lightning comes out, and then everything starts to fall apart. I thought that was a really cool detail that I didn't notice the first time around. Also, I'm editing, that's why the audio's bad. I'm not actually using my proper setup. There's also the other North American one as well, and I think it summarizes the feeling playing Link to the Past at the time would have given you.
Introducing the epic challenge that only the Super Nintendo Entertainment System could make possible. Across endless land and water, you search. Deep into a parallel world where light becomes dark. You search. And just when you think your search has ended, you find it's just begun. The new Legend of Zelda, A Link to the Past. Now you're playing with power and superpower.
And the last commercial I could find was the German one.
Super Nintendos neuester Hit heißt Zelda und der reißt mächtig mit. Abenteuer, Action, schwarze Magie, Drachen und Monster und Fantasy. Taucht ein in diese Zauberwelt und kämpft wie Link, der Superheld. Rettet die Prinzessin aus teuflischen Klauen, dazu müsst ihr dem Drachen die Rübe abhauen. Doch kaum denkst du bist am Ziel, macht ein Gruselreptil dich wieder mobil. Also zeig, was du kannst, steh deinem Mann, denn Zelda turnt dich tierisch an.
Zelda und die unschlagbaren Welthits, nur für Super Nintendo. Nintendo!
I have no words. It's beautiful. Okay, I lied. I have words. It's just the Japanese ad, but with German raps over it. And I can't speak German. If anyone out there can speak German, please tell me what they're rapping about. I've never heard a German rap before, and I'm just curious. So, I wrote in the script, but I just didn't record the segue from this section to the next section. So, the next part is about the comics and music and stuff. So, yeah. I had a whole sentence written down that I was supposed to say, but I'm too lazy to go back and read the script and say it right now, because it's 3 o'clock in the morning, and I just want to be done editing this video. A Link to the Past was adapted into comic form in early 1992 in the Nintendo Power magazine, in its 32nd issue, and had 12 total volumes released over that year, ending in December 1992 in volume 43. And the comic was created by a man named Shotaro Ishinomori. What I have here is a reprint of the comic that I found at a comic book store when I was out of town. While I was there, I was looking for JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Volume 4, Stardust Crusaders Part 3, hardcover, and I saw this sitting there on the shelf, and I had to buy it. And as of recording this right now, I haven't read it yet, so I'm going to do that, and then you'll hear my thoughts on it in the next line. The comic takes a lot of creative liberties with the story, but in the end, it's still A Link to the Past's plot, just kind of changed a bit. And Link also looks like Sanji from One Piece. And you know, if you think about it, he also gets struck by lightning by Agon. But yes, the comic in itself is actually really good, and if you can find it somewhere, I would totally recommend you read it today, just for the heck of it, you know? It's pretty fun and entertaining. There were also 2 different mangas released for this game. I have one of them right here, and it's the newer one, released in 2009 to 2010. And it's basically the same as the game story, just told in a different format. But I love it nonetheless, and the other one, to my knowledge, has never left Japan, and has some differences in the game, but I can't find a translation anywhere online, so unfortunately, I can't talk too much about this one. But I would really love to in the future. And lastly, I want to touch on the music of this game. A Link to the Past is full of some of the franchise's most iconic music, and it will always have that going for it. This game was composed by Koji Kondo, has done a lot of work on the Zelda franchise and other Nintendo games, most recently working on Mario Wonder with a bunch of other people, and it's such a good soundtrack. So good in fact that they released it on a CD, but this is without question one of my favorites. In Japan, A Link to the Past soundtrack CD came out, with a full sound drama on it, and it's really neat. But there's no way to listen to it in English. You can either find a transcript online or just a YouTube video with auto-generated subtitles. So, I've come to a decision. In order to make this more widely available, I'm going to make a full recreation of it in English with some modded improvements. And if you want to be a voice actor or whatever I need, I'll have a link to the Casting Call Club page down below, because this is a really neat nugget of Zelda and Nintendo history, and I think it deserves to be heard by all. So, the first step would be to make an English dub. So if you want to help, go down to the description and audition at the Casting Call Club page below. Sup, peeps? We made it to the end of the video. I'm sorry this was a long one. I wasn't trying it to be this long. I'm tired. I don't know if you can tell. Oh shit, my light fell over. I'm gonna take a break from Zelda for like a little bit. Not too long. It's just other games I want to make videos on that aren't Zelda. Like Bayonetta, I haven't played it yet. I want it for like 3 years, and I really want to play it. So, you should subscribe and stay tuned for that. But Zelda shouldn't be gone for too long. Next one is Link's Awakening. I'm actually fucking exhausted. I hope you enjoyed the video. You should like, comment, subscribe. Huge thank you to my boys, everybody in the video, all my boys in the video. Goodbye. Sup peeps, N-Card Barty here. How's it going? It's your boy, it's N-Card Barty. It's like 4 in the morning right now. I just finished editing this part. Now I gotta add the music in. And I just want to say thanks for watching, for getting this far. I know I probably just said it in the last clip, but I don't remember what happened to me 5 seconds ago anyway, so I'm just going to preface that, yeah, I'm taking a small break from Zelda. I don't want to get burnt out. It's not like it's still not my favorite game series of all time, but I just don't want to get burnt out or feel like bad making the videos, because I have a lot of fun making them, and I don't want it to become like a monotonous, tedious task. So taking a break for a couple uploads, and then I'm going to keep pumping out more Zelda videos as time goes on. I also have to wait for my Game Boy player to show up so I can capture the footage for the next game. But yeah, that's it. Alright, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.